This presentation is an introduction to the endocrine system. There are four primary ways in which cells communicate with each other: direct, paracrine, endocrine, and synaptic communication. In direct communication, the cells must be in direct contact with each other. An example of this is using gap junctions. If you recall, this is one of the types of cellular connections. A gap junction allows messages to be transferred from one cell to another without having to cross the membrane. The messages are carried as ions or other small solutes. In paracrine communication, the cells do not have to be touching, but they do have to be in close proximity. Chemicals called paracrine factors are released from one cell and will have an effect only on those cells nearby. In synaptic communication, a chemical called a neurotransmitter is released from one cell, which is always a neuron, crosses a synapse, and will bind to a receptor on the postsynaptic cell. You may have already learned about a neuromuscular junction. In that instance, the postsynaptic cell is a muscle fiber, and the neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. In endocrine communication, which is what we are going to explore in this chapter, the bloodstream is used to transport hormones throughout the whole body. By definition, a hormone is a chemical substance secreted into the extracellular fluids that regulate metabolic activity of other cells in the body. Because the bloodstream is throughout the whole body, the hormones travel throughout the whole body. But the only cells that will respond to that hormone are those that have the correct receptor. For example, there is a hormone called prolactin. Prolactin is responsible for the production and secretion of breast milk. Therefore, the only cells that will respond to prolactin are the cells of the mammary gland. Hormones can be placed into three different groups based on their chemical structure: amino acid derivatives, peptide hormones, and lipid derivatives. Recall that amino acids are the building blocks of proteins, and a small protein is called a peptide. The bond between amino acids is called a peptide bond. Examples of amino acid derivative hormones include the thyroid hormones, catecholamines, and tryptophan derivatives. There are a few hormones that come from the thyroid, and they are all based on a single amino acid. The catecholamines include hormones like epinephrine and norepinephrine, which come from the adrenal gland, and dopamine, which is secreted by several different types of cells in the body. It is interesting that all three of these catecholamines can act as both hormones and neurotransmitters, depending on where they are produced. The tryptophan derivatives are all based on the amino acid tryptophan. Melatonin, secreted by the pineal gland, helps regulate day and night cycles, and is one example of a tryptophan derivative. The peptide hormones vary greatly. They range from just a few amino acids up to as many as 200 amino acids. These hormones are usually secreted in an inactive form and then converted in the bloodstream to their active form. Examples of peptide hormones include all hormones from the hypothalamus, heart, thymus, digestive tract, and pancreas, and most of the hormones from the pituitary gland. The lipid derivatives have two main groups, the eicosanoids and steroid hormones. The eicosanoids help coordinate cellular activity and can affect enzyme function. The steroid hormones are all based on a cholesterol molecule. Some important steroid hormones include the sex hormones estrogen and testosterone, and the corticosteroids of the adrenal gland. Now that we have talked about the different classes of hormones, how do these hormones work? Remember that a hormone travels throughout the bloodstream and will only affect cells that have the correct receptor. These receptors can be found in two places, on the cell membrane or inside the cell. Depending on the receptor location, the hormone will affect the cell in two different ways. The first method is what I call direct gene activation. Do you recall what and where your genes are? A gene is all of the nucleotides necessary to code for one protein, and they are located inside the nucleus. And the nucleus is definitely inside the cell. So if the hormone can enter the cell and find a receptor inside that cell, either in the cytoplasm or in the nucleus itself, it will directly affect the DNA of that cell. That is direct gene activation. If the hormone can't get through the plasma membrane, the receptor will be located on the cell surface. The hormone will bind to the receptor, activate what's called a Gprotein, which in turn activates a second messenger. This second messenger is either cyclic AMP or CAMP or calcium. Then the second messenger works to change activity inside the cell. My non-scientific example of these two methods uses a courier service that is delivering to a secure building. Let's say that building is the Pentagon. Anyone can visit, but you would need clearance to reach certain areas, or probably to see any military or government officers. So if a person is from a day-to-day delivery service, even a food delivery service, would not be able to get past the security desk. They would need to drop off the package, and a person from inside the Pentagon would deliver it to the intended recipient. But if the person delivering the package came directly from the White House with high-level clearance, they would be able to get through security and deliver the package themselves. So the pizza delivery example would be a second messenger activation, and the White House delivery person would be the direct gene activation. The endocrine organs include the hypothalamus, pineal gland, pituitary gland, thyroid and parathyroid glands, the pancreas, and adrenal glands. These organs have the primary function of secreting hormones. Some organs are called secondary endocrine organs because secreting hormones is their secondary function. These include the heart, thymus, digestive tract, kidneys, and gonads. Gonads are organs that produce reproductive cells, such as the ovaries and testes.